In this video, we will discuss some controversial issues related to Vietnam, including crime rates, human trafficking, and the drug trade. Vietnam, formerly known as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, is a nation situated in Southeast Asia, occupying the eastern part of the Indochina Peninsula. Characterized by its elongated shape, Vietnam is bordered by China in the north, Laos and Cambodia in the west, and the South China Sea to the south and east. Divided into North and South Vietnam in 1955, the country was reunited in 1976 as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Vietnam is a mountainous country. The Song Khoi and Mekong deltas are significant lowlands. The coastal plains are located in the east. The rest of the land is mostly covered by forests and mountains. The main products are rice, cassava, sweet potato, corn, coffee, tea, rubber, and handicrafts. Vietnam is a developing country with a lower middle-income economy, but is one of the fastest-growing economies of the 21st century. Vietnam has high levels of corruption, censorship, environmental problems, and a poor human rights record. The country ranks among the lowest in international measures of civil liberties, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and ethnic minority rights. Settlements dating back to the Paleolithic era can be found in Vietnam, and in the first millennium BCE. States were established in the Red River Delta of present-day northern Vietnam. From 111 BC until the emergence of the first Vietnamese dynasty in 939, the region was annexed by the Han Dynasty of China. Monarchical dynasties, influenced by Buddhism and Confucianism, managed to break free from Chinese cultural dominance. Expanding southward, they conquered the Campa region and extended their territory to the Mekong Delta. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Vietnam was effectively divided into two regions, Dang Trong and Dang Nguyen. The Nguyen dynasty, the last imperial dynasty, surrendered to France in 1883. By 1887, Vietnam was integrated into French Indochina as three separate regions. Immediately after World War II, the Viet Minh, a nationalist coalition led by the Communist Revolutionary Ho Chi Minh, launched the August Revolution and declared Vietnam's independence in 1945. Following World War II, France returned to Vietnam to reclaim its colonial power, leading to the First Indochina War, which Vietnam won in 1954. As a result of the agreement signed between the Viet Minh and France, Vietnam was divided into two parts. Shortly after, the Vietnam War began between Communist North Vietnam, supported by the Soviet Union and China, and anti-communist South Vietnam, backed by the United States. Following North Vietnam's victory in 1975, Vietnam was reunified in 1976 as a unitary socialist state under the Communist Party of Vietnam. Ineffective central planning, a Western trade embargo, and wars with Cambodia and China further strained the country. In 1986, the Communist Party of Vietnam initiated economic and political reforms similar to those in China, transforming the country into a socialist-oriented market economy. Vietnam was colonized by France as part of Indochina in the 19th century. The predominantly rural population, alienated from their land, was resentful of French rule. Although there were occasional nationalist uprisings, none were successful. With Japan's occupation of Vietnam weakening French authority, the Viet Minh independence movement, led by Ho Chi Minh, declared a republic on September 2, 1945. This brought France into conflict with the Vietnamese communist leader Ho Chi Minh. Unable to withstand Ho Chi Minh, who had connections in Moscow, received weapons from China, and knew the guerrilla tactics employed by Mao Zedong against the Kuomintang. France surrendered in May 1954. Vietnam was divided into two parts in 1956 with the intention of reunification through elections. Ho Chi Minh's communist government ruled the north, while Ngo Dinh Diem's government, supported by France, ruled the south. However, the elections never took place. The government in Saigon pursued an authoritarian policy backed by the United States, leading to growing discontent in the south. The Viet Cong Front, supported by the North, was formed, and a civil war began with the involvement of the United States. Despite their technical superiority, American soldiers struggled against the Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics in unfamiliar terrain. The Viet Cong launched the Tet Offensive in 1968, and although a ceasefire was declared in 1973, the war soon resumed. It finally ended on April 30th, 1975, when the Viet Cong captured Saigon. 1. Vietnam is located between latitudes 8 degrees and 24 degrees north and longitudes 102 degrees and 110 degrees east on the Indochina Peninsula. The total length of the country's land borders is 4,639 kilometers. Vietnam's terrain is mostly rugged and covered with dense forests, with less than 20% of the land being flat. Mountains account for 40% of the country's land, while tropical forests cover approximately 42%. The Red River Delta, a flat, roughly triangular region in the north covering 15,000 square kilometers, is smaller but more densely developed and populated than the Mekong River Delta in the south. This region, once the entrance to the Gulf of Tonkin, has been filled with alluvial deposits from the riverbanks over thousands of years, covering approximately 40,000 square kilometers. The delta is a low-lying plain with no point more than 3 meters above sea level. It is crisscrossed by a labyrinth of rivers and canals that carry so much sediment that the delta advances into the sea by 60 to 80 meters each year. Vietnam's exclusive economic zone covers an area of 417,663 square kilometers in the South China Sea. Southern Vietnam is divided into coastal plains, the Annamite Range, and extensive forests. Plateaus, consisting of 5 relatively flat basalt soil plateaus, account for 16% of the country's arable land and 22% of its total forest area. The soil in a large part of southern Vietnam is relatively nutrient poor due to intensive cultivation. Few small earthquakes have been recorded. The northern part of the country consists mainly of plateaus and the Red River Delta. Due to latitudinal differences and significant variations in topographic relief, Vietnam's climate varies considerably from region to region. During the winter or dry season, which generally lasts from November to April, monsoon winds typically blow from the northeast along the Chinese coast and through the Gulf of Tonkin, collecting significant moisture. Annual average temperatures are generally higher in the lowlands than in the mountains, especially in southern Vietnam. Temperatures in the southern lowlands around Ho Chi Minh City and the Mekong Delta are less variable and range between 21 and 35 degrees Celsius throughout the year. In areas around Hanoi and the Red River Delta, temperatures are much lower, ranging between 15 and 33 degrees Celsius. Seasonal variations are much more pronounced in the mountains, plateaus, and northernmost regions. Temperatures can range from 3 degrees Celsius in December and January to 37 degrees Celsius in July and August. In winter, the highest peaks of the mountains in the far north near the Chinese border occasionally receive snowfall. Vietnam receives abundant rainfall, with average annual precipitation ranging from 1,500 to 2,000 millimeters during the monsoon seasons. This often leads to flooding, especially in cities with weak drainage systems. The country is also affected by tropical depressions, tropical storms, and typhoons. With 55% of its population living in low-lying coastal areas, Vietnam is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change.
It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again.
The National Assembly of Vietnam is a unicameral legislature composed of 500 members, headed by a chairman. This body is superior to both the executive and judicial branches, and all government ministers are appointed from among the members of the National Assembly. The Supreme People's Court of Vietnam, headed by the Chief Justice, is the highest court of appeal in the country, but is also accountable to the National Assembly. Below the Supreme People's Court are provincial people's courts and numerous local courts. Military courts have special jurisdiction over matters related to state security. Vietnam maintains the death penalty for many crimes. The only legal party in the Socialist Republic of Vietnam is the ruling Communist Party of Vietnam. A new constitution was adopted in April 1992, amending the 1975 Constitution. The administrative concept of the Communist Party was reapplied to all units of administration and politics. The right to contest elections was granted only to the Communist Party and its organizations.
Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life changes just open the door. One thing's certain, I'll always be yours.
The People's Army of Vietnam, PAVN, is the armed force of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. It consists of a total of 5,452,000 personnel, including 412,000 active and 5,040,000 active reserve. Thanks to its experience in the First Indochina War, the Vietnam War, and the Third Indochina War, it is an expert in guerrilla warfare. Established in North Vietnam on December 22, 1944. It became the armed force of the newly formed Socialist Republic of Vietnam after the unification with South Vietnam in 1976. It possesses a significant amount of equipment, much of which is left over from the Vietnam War, including 1,470 tanks, 3,150 armored fighting vehicles, 2,200 artillery pieces, 140 helicopters plus 25 attack helicopters, 1,100 multiple rocket launchers. The country has an external debt of $68,380 million and a defense budget of $3,365 million. Vietnam has 180,549 kilometers of roads, 2,632 kilometers of railways, 45 airports in service, and 3 submarines. It also has 26 training aircraft. Vietnam's economy has historically been heavily reliant on agriculture, particularly wet rice cultivation. The country also produces significant quantities of bauxite, a key component in aluminum production, which is mined in central Vietnam. Since reunification, the economy has been primarily shaped by the Communist Party of Vietnam, CPV, through 5-year plans determined by the party's Central Committee and National Congress plenary sessions. Collectivization of farms, factories, and capital goods was implemented as part of establishing central planning, with millions of people working for state enterprises. Under tight state control, the Vietnamese economy struggled with inefficiency, corruption in state-owned enterprises, poor quality, and insufficient production. Following the decline of the Eastern Bloc and the collapse of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, Vietnam, faced with reduced economic aid from its main trading partner and the negative effects of the U.S.-imposed post-war trade embargo, began to liberalize its trade and pursue an economic development policy by devaluing its currency to boost exports. The United States lifted its economic embargo on Vietnam in early 1994. Although the 1997 Asian financial crisis caused a slowdown in economic growth to around 4 to 5% annually, the economy recovered in 1999. Between 2000 and 2005, the economy grew by approximately 7% per year, making it one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. Extreme poverty, defined as the percentage of the population living on less than $1 a day, has significantly decreased in Vietnam, and the relative poverty rate is now lower than in China, India, and the Philippines. This decline can be attributed to equitable economic policies aimed at improving living standards and preventing increasing inequality. These policies included equitable land distribution, investment in poorer remote areas, and subsidization of education and health services in the early stages of the Doi Moi program. Since the early 2000s, Vietnam has implemented a sequenced trade liberalization approach, opening up some sectors of the economy to international markets. Manufacturing, information technology, and high-tech industries now constitute a large and rapidly growing part of the national economy. As a result of various land reform measures, Vietnam has become a significant exporter of agricultural products. It is currently the world's largest cashew nut producer with a one-third global share, the largest producer of black pepper, supplying one-third of the world market, and since the 1990s, the world's second largest rice exporter after Thailand. Consequently, Vietnam is also the world's second largest coffee exporter. The country, along with other states in the greater Mekong subregion, has one of the highest rates of land use for permanent crops. Other primary exports include tea, rubber, and fishery products. The contribution of agriculture to Vietnam's GDP has declined in recent years from 42% in 1989 to 20% in 2006, as production in other sectors of the economy has increased. Vietnam's total fisheries production, from capture fisheries and aquaculture, was 5.6 million metric tons in 2011 and 6.7 million metric tons in 2016. The production of Vietnam's fisheries sector has experienced strong growth, attributable to the continued growth of the aquaculture subsector. Vietnam, once known only for war, is now considered one of the world's leading tourist destinations. Moreover, it is one of the safest places in Asia with one of the lowest crime rates.